This week's Parsha is Kehilah, and rather than give a long and boring sermon, I'm going to read to you from the Parsha. I'm going to read to you a bedtime story. So you can still take a nap. It's a win-win. But I want to read what I think are some very profound passages from this week's Parsha. Does anyone know the general... Harrison, tell us a little bit about the Parsha. Your father told you to stand up. He wants everyone to see you out there in the internet. Okay, go. Harrison, by the way, will become bar mitzvah tomorrow morning. But all of our kids, all of our religious school kids can cite every verse of the Torah on command. Go. Egypt. Mm-hmm. Right? So Harrison just described in, I think, really concrete and concise terms, very Jewishly. If you were a rabbi, that would have taken 20 minutes. But you are not yet a rabbi, so you know. That was awesome. And the truth is that when we look at Kehilah, we typically only focus on the story of the golden calf and this crisis of faith, which you're going to speak about tomorrow morning when you talk about faith and what it means to have faith. But we never focus on, well, rarely do we focus on this whole other part that comes after the crisis of faith. I mean, Harrison, I couldn't have said it better myself. This moment where Moses is like, on the one hand, seeing his people completely fall apart into chaos and building this golden calf, and then turns to God and then has to talk God out of schmeicing all of the Israelites, is a moment of transcendent panic for him. It really questions every aspect of his leadership. And so the Parsha is about faith. The second half is about Moses and his leaderships and the pitfalls of leadership. It's not easy to be a leader. It's not easy to be a change agent. It's certainly not easy to schlep 602,000 Israelites, Jews, in the desert, right? And get lost all at the same time. Huh? Manna does fall from the sky, so at least they have food. The point that I wanted to make tonight is, I was thinking about this this afternoon, which is early for me to think about preparing what I'm going to... Last night, or 2 nights ago, Wednesday, I was invited from a board member at Temple Sinai in Denver. Now, I served as assistant rabbi of Temple Sinai in Denver from 1995 to 1999. So one of their board members, this lady, Marty Midas, who, as soon as she said her name, I knew who she was, even though I haven't seen her in 18 years or spoken to her, said, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Temple Sinai this year. Makes sense. They were founded in 1967. The founding rabbi was a man named Rabbi Ray Zwerin, Ray Zwerin. And Ray and his wife, Ricky, literally with 2 other families that they're honoring, went into the Denver phone book, looked at every Jewish surname, called, and invited them to a Shabbat service. That's how they started the synagogue. It was through the white pages, 3 people, the Zwerins and 2 other families who were being honored, I believe, on April 29th. And so they asked me to, via Skype or the other one, FaceTime, to do a video to say a few words about Rabbi Zwerin. Because of all of his assistant rabbis since 1967, I was his favorite, by far. I bet you they didn't ask any others. So So not only that, I wrote Rabbi Zwerin Ray an email on Wednesday night, and he said, you know what? I didn't know if it was a surprise. I didn't tell him I got this call. But I said, you know what, I'm going to try it. It's on April 29th. I think I have a bar mitzvah that morning, but nonetheless, I can fly, get to Denver, go to the dinner, because that's kind of a big deal, and we like to stay connected. Even though I haven't seen a lot of these people in a long time, they're still family. I learned a lot. I thought today about how great my mentors were, how blessed, how lucky, how awesome it was to have Rabbi Zwerin as a mentor, as a rabbi. Rabbi Marty Wiener in San Francisco, who a lot of you have met because he helped lead high holiday services a few years ago and officiated at my kids' B'nai Mitzvah. Rabbi Aaron Pedikowski, who was my rabbi during my intern years in Roslyn Heights, New York, on Long Island. And I thought about this also because serendipitously, one of our own mentees, Randy Burke, got into rabbinic school this week. So I've been thinking about mentors and leadership styles, and Moses represents what I think I've learned from Rabbi Zwerin and from my mentors I would say, above all else, this is probably the most important part of leadership, especially for rabbis going all the way back to Moses, and that is not just humility, but authenticity. Which is to say that you are the same on the bima as you are off the bima. I remember my very, very first Devar Torah in July of 1995. I was finished, and Rabbi Zwerin said, I said, so, how was it? And he said, it was a very good paper for rabbinic school, meaning you have to learn how to speak to people, not read a paper that you would write for rabbinic school. You have to learn how to tell a story. And he was very much helpful in showing me that you're a funny guy, sometimes. You've got personality. Let that come out in your speaking style instead of writing some, uptight paper with footnotes and then delivering that as a sermon. And I learned a lot from him because he was one of the greatest preachers I've ever heard. Moses has that same level of authenticity. During the crisis, as Harrison said, he's up on the mountain. God says, get down there. They're going crazy. They're going nuts. They're building a golden calf. They're everything, the plagues and the splitting of the sea and Mount Sinai. It's a garnish. They ignored me. You love it when I do Yiddish. I only know like 4 words, and one of them I can't use at services. So get down there, and Moses is now dealing with going down there, and he's in this crisis because he's got to go control the people, and he gets mad and throws the tablets down, and then he gets mad at God for wanting to kill all of them. And that's part of leadership. That's part of when you learn from a mentor, you have to see how they are in a crisis. But after the crisis, Moses goes into a severe depression. He gets really, really vulnerable. And this is what he says. I'm just going to read this to you and say a few words, and then you have to come to Torah study for the rest. Moses says to God, after all of that chaos, "See, God, you say to me, lead these people forward, but you haven't made known to me who you will send with me." Parenthetically, he's saying, it's very lonely, God. I am very, very lonely. I feel all alone. One key aspect of leadership, as we know, whether it's rabbis or others, is it's lonely at the top. And it's lonely at the top from Moshe Rabbeinu. Further, he says to God, you said to me, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. God, you told me that I'm your one guy. I'm your go-to guy. I'm your person. That you've singled me out, and you like me. So God, if I've really gained your favor, if you really like me, let me know your ways that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider, too, that this nation is your people. What Moses is saying here is, I'm very lonely. I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm not so sure I believe in you. This is a very existential moment for Moses. It's one of the great, most profound parts of the Parsha that we skip over because we like to focus on the golden calf. But he really is almost like having post-traumatic stress. He's alone, he's depressed, and he says, I don't even know, God, if I believe in you, if I have faith anymore. So if you like me as much as you say that you do, And if I'm your special person who's going to lead these people, he says, show me who you are. I want to see you. I want to see who you are. So God says, in a very sensitive way too, back in a very vulnerable way, if you will, I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden, God says. You're not alone. And, he said, I will let it be known among the people, all of them, that you're my guy. That they're not to, A, mess with you, parenthetically Korach later on, who goes and messes with Moses, gets in a lot of trouble for that because Moses is God's guy. And he says to Moses, I'm also going to do something extraordinary for you because you really have gained favor. I really do care about you and like you. He said, I'm going to show you my presence. And so God says to Moses, he puts him, by the way, in the crag of a rock. Crag, by the way, very good crossword puzzle word. If you do the crosswords, crag is in there once every 10th day. He says, but you can't see my face. So he puts Moses in the crag of this rock. He holds his hand, if you will, over Moses' eyes. And he says, you can't see my face, for a human being may not see me and live. You can see me, but you'll die right away. Because it's God, right? And so he stations him in this crag of this rock. He puts him into the cleft of the rock, and he passes before Moses, but his back side, not his front side. Now, don't forget about the teachings that there's no anthropomorphic God, that God doesn't have body parts. Just put that off to the side for a second. The Torah is telling us that God sees Moses in despair and says, I'm going to hide you, and I'm going to take my hand away from your eyes, and you will see my backside pass before you, my presence, but not my face. And at that moment, automatically, the next verse teaches us, Moses started to write the second set of tablets. It worked. He got his vavoom back. He felt faith again. He felt connection again. I would imagine having that kind of moment of seeing connection with God, of meeting God, so to speak, would be encouraging, would help. Now, I want to go back to what I was saying at the beginning. Leadership, rabbis, mentors, can teach us a lot of things. And I was telling you that I think I've been blessed because all of my mentors taught me how to be the same person on the beam and off the beam. What you see is what you get. Take your job and role seriously, but not yourself seriously. And in times when all of us get sad or feel alone or feel depressed, it would be nice to have God show us God's presence, which would definitely give us some encouragement. But one of the things I want you to think about on this Shabbat is how it is completely and utterly normal, healthy, acceptable to lose faith in God, to lose your faith. Moses does it. Says, I don't even know if I believe in you anymore. It's okay to do that. And I should say, and the next time as you've lost your faith or you're struggling with God, that something happens or you see something where you recognize godliness in it, a miracle, if you will, a moment of transcendence, a time, for example, when a bar mitzvah boy can get up in front of a congregation and off the cuff explain 4,000-year-old words to a congregation of adults. Don't lose sight of that moment, because those quick moments, while we can't see God's presence pass before us because we're not Moses, those are moments when the transcendent God is passing before us. Don't miss it. Because if you don't miss it, then during that time when you're in the depths of sadness or loneliness or losing your faith, then you will see God just like Moses did. And my guess is, if you allow yourself, you will snap out of it like he did and be able to, not necessarily write the second set of tablets, but be able to feel that connection again. Because after all, losing faith is all about losing connection with someone or something, someone important or someone special. But gaining faith, having faith, is about connecting. It's about noticing, and it's about connecting. And the punchline is that at the end of this, when Moses writes those second set of tablets, he calls first and foremost the past presidents of the board. He calls the wise ones, the wise ones who were the elders of Israel up. And God says to them, Moses is going to make a pass by you guys first with the tablets, v'yesham, and be there. The last thing I really learned from Rabbi Zwerin, who I look forward to honoring with my words on a video, and hopefully in person, was being present, being in the moment, being there is also about being with God. It's also about recognizing the God in someone else, because we're all created in the image of God. So on this Shabbat, let's give thanks for our mentors and our rabbis and our teachers, but mostly let's recognize that we have the power to see God. We have the ability to experience God, not in a booming voice and not necessarily in such a dramatic way, but that we can be lifted out of our doldrums and have faith when we connect and recognize those moments and be able to say, as Moses was, let's get back to work. Shabbat Shalom.